Hello, and welcome to Money Matters TV and our segment called Growth Stories, where we hear from entrepreneurs and advisors who share secrets and advice on what business owners need to know to grow. I'm your host, Mike Verrill, VP with the Strategic Development of the Sharp Financial Group. The problem for business owners is fractured business and personal financial advice. Our solution is our unique, unified, integrated financial management, where we combine accounting and tax, business advisory, investment banking, wealth management, and family office services in a way that helps entrepreneurs and their families achieve extraordinary things. From time to time, issues involving life sciences, technology, or healthcare may be discussed on this show. Those discussions are not and should not be viewed as financial advice. Moreover, since the show is pre-recorded and showed at a later date, some of those conversations may no longer be relevant. I am joined by my co-host, Katie Wenger. Katie is a transaction advisory associate with CBRE, a global real estate consulting firm. Katie helps businesses determine their real estate needs and works with high growth companies in the Philadelphia area to develop the real estate strategies. Katie also serves on the advising committee member for the Philadelphia Alliance for Capital and Technology, and also is an active member of the Women's Network in Philadelphia. Katie, as always, great to see you. How are you?
Hey, Mike, it's great to see you. Happy New Year. It's good to be back here.
Yeah, absolutely. Ready to charge into a new year. Just curious, since we last talked, what are you seeing in the market? Anything interesting going on from a commercial real estate standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, our market has continued to evolve since the pandemic started in March 2020. So I think a lot of office users are still trying to figure out what their future of their office may look like now that we are in this hybrid environment. And of course, we're seeing the industrial markets stay busy with all the e-commerce going on. So lots of different shifting dynamics. And I think in 23, we'll continue to see some more shifts. So we're looking forward to an exciting year.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if the job market ever cools down, whether employers gain leverage on bringing people back to the office. I saw recently that Disney is requiring at least 80% office time by March 1st. So, usually the big companies like that lead the way, and we'll see where that goes. So thanks for keeping us up to date, and we'll check in again on that soon. We have an exciting guest today. I'm really looking forward to speaking with her. She's a little bit atypical than what we talk about. She's a leader of a great not-for-profit in the Philadelphia marketplace here. But I think there's a lot of similarities in her experience, particularly in bringing two organizations together that we'll hear about in a little bit. So I'm looking forward to that. Before we do that, we do have a question from one of our viewers. Len Wilson from Philadelphia would like to know, what factors affect commercial real estate? Obviously, there's many things that you could talk about there, Katie, but I'm just curious, in the current economic environment, what are the things that you see causing, either on the tenant side or the landlord side, the most impact on people's real estate decisions?
It's a great question, and there's certainly a lot impacting those decisions in today's environment. I would have to say the biggest shift we're seeing right now, especially when looking at the capital markets or the buying and selling side of commercial real estate, is continued inflation and interest rates has affected a lot of buyers' ability to get different opportunities. So it's put a lot of deals on hold or rethinking a lot of these deals right now. So that's a primary concern, I think, going into 2023 is just where that's all going to shake out. And when we, it of course trickles into the office side and the tenancy side when we're looking at the leasing market. So certainly a lot of impacts on depending on what you're looking at, what vertical or business line you're interested in. But I would say the ability to get financing is one item that is top of the mind for a lot of buyers and sellers.
Yeah, I guess both on the commercial and the residential side, inflation is certainly driving a lot of the changing decisions when it comes to real estate. So yeah, hopefully, Len, that was helpful and gave you some insight into the question you were asking. It's always great to hear from our viewers, and here's how to send your questions to Money Matters TV.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com, On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says Send Us Your Questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY, -matters, MATTERS, TV.com.
From humble beginnings in a working class family to running social services organizations providing essential services for some of the most vulnerable populations in Philadelphia, our guest today has learned to achieve great things with limited resources. We are pleased to welcome the Grow Stories, Kathy Desmond, president of HopePHL. Kathy and Katie and I are honored to have you as a guest and joining our conversation for Grow Stories. How are you?
Thanks, Mike and Katie. Very happy to be here.
Kathy, it's a true pleasure to have you today. And before we get started, I think it'd be really helpful for our viewers just to get an overview of HopePHL and where it came from, where originated, and kind of what you all are up to in the greater Philadelphia community.
Sure, Katie. So HopePHL is a new name of a combined organization, and the prior two organizations were People's Emergency Center and Youth Services Incorporated. We just merged as of November 19th and kicked off our new name in January. So we're probably a mid to large size social service organization that focuses on serving children, youth, and families in particular around housing, education. We do a lot of policy and advocacy work. And we do anything from building affordable housing and building and managing affordable housing to helping children in our community get into high quality early childhood education. So there's an array of services. All of them are trauma informed and, really help to improve the health and well-being of families and communities. So that's essentially what we do. There's probably under that, our umbrella is close to 30 different programs, really focused on, we particularly focus on early childhood and adolescence to really improve, to do a lot of prevention work and improve the trajectory of children's lives.
That's great, Kathy. We've talked before, and it's always the services that are needed, unfortunately, are always expanding, and sometimes the resources, financial resources, are going in an opposite direction. But it sounds like you might be a perfect fit for navigating that with your upbringing. We talked about humble beginnings. Can you give us a sense of what it was like to grow up in the Desmond household and what life was like as a kid growing up in your family?
Sure. So I am one of 11 children born to blue-collar workers who worked multiple jobs in order to make ends meet. We were not wealthy. We were far from wealthy. In fact, we lived in pretty significant poverty for most of my childhood, including living in a home with no electricity or running water for a period of time. I was the exact middle child and in the middle of 5 brothers. So I had 5 brothers and 5 sisters. The sisters were the bookends of the family, and the brothers were in the middle, and I was in the middle of them. And so I learned early on to listen intently, to collaborate, the value of collaboration, how to influence people to get what I want, and also how to hold my own in a room full of men and to throw a really mean football. So that's kind of what growing up in my household taught me. My parents were very devout Catholics, so that was a pretty significant piece of our upbringing. We were always taught about the importance of giving back and the value of education.
It's an incredible, childhood and to hear about these early beginnings and how, later we'll hear more about how they've informed your career path. And I think something we had discussed was really your drive for a life of purpose and looking for a career path and kind of those, next steps that would really speak to that purpose. And love to hear some of your thoughts and your experiences that kind of led you towards your current position with Hopeful in the Philadelphia area?
Sure. Well, as a kid, I always wanted to be a pediatrician. I mean, right up until I went to college, and really, I think when I entered college, I entered a program that Wilkes University had at the time. They were in partnership with Hahnemann Medical School. And so you did your 4 years of college in 2 years and then went on to medical school. And so I was in that program for those 2 years, and it was really challenging and very interesting. There was really something missing for me, and that was really more of an emotional connection to what I was doing. And so at the end of the 2 years, I ended up not going to medical school. Instead, I changed my major to psychology and sociology, and felt much more of a connection to the work, to the knowledge that I was learning. And from there, began as a new graduate in community mental health, working with it was at the time that the institutionalization was happening across the country. So people with pretty significant emotional health issues were being placed back into the community, primarily in group homes and those kinds of settings. And many of them had schizophrenia or other very intense behavioral health or emotional needs. And so I began doing that work and knew immediately that that's the kind of work I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and pretty much where my talent would lie. So I started in community mental health, then went into working in school districts, children with disabilities, sexual health education, which was a really fun thing to do. And then what did I do after that? Yeah, I think after that I went into graduate school. Wanted to be a school social worker, and so started graduate school to get my MSW.
And that path to graduate school brought you to Philadelphia, correct?
It did. Yeah, the path to graduate school brought me to Temple University. I really wanted to go to an inner city school. I felt like I really needed the exposure. I grew up in a very rural community with limited exposure to a lot of diversity, and felt like I really needed to challenge some of what I was taught or learned growing up. And so thought going to an inner city graduate school would be best for me. And it really was. I mean, it really helped me to look at my own biases, challenge my assumptions about things, really expanded my worldview, and taught me a lot about difference, and forced me to kind of just challenge my own stereotypes and beliefs. And while not easy, it was really, really worth that. I grew a lot from that experience.
Yeah, because you're dealing with people that maybe, definitely need the services, but, it's not people that you're normally interacting with every day, and they've got different life experiences bringing them to where they are. So I guess you spend a lot of time kind of putting yourself in their shoes, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, and I would say that that's where I've learned the most, or from the people that I've had the privilege of working with and serving through the work. Really walking alongside those that are the most disenfranchised among us is very humbling and enraging, to be honest. When you see how systemic racism works and the impact it has on communities and on families, and forces people to live on the fringes, it really motivates you to want to change the systems that affect those families. And for me, it was a very motivating thing. Again, I mean, those folks I've had the privilege of walking with and serving have really taught me a great deal, not only about myself, but about the world, our society, and where we need to focus our change efforts.
It's incredible, and I think speaks to, your true purpose that you're driving towards, and wanting to make this meaningful impact, not only on individuals, but to the greater system that exists in today's society, especially speaking towards the Philadelphia region. And I would love to hear about some of those impacts, because I know you've made so many, but some of the systems that you were able to help, get off the ground that we're still using today, and how that turned personal too in those experiences for you.
Sure. So prior to working at Hopeful, I worked for 25 years in the Philadelphia child welfare system for an organization called Best Nest Incorporated. And Best Nest was one of the first organizations in the state of Pennsylvania to work with children that were HIV infected and to place them in foster homes. At the time, the child welfare system was footing the bill for those placements solely footing the bill, and needed to pay a lot of money to recruit families that were willing to care for those children because of not only the stigma, but because of the risk those families were taking. And so it got to the point where the child welfare system could not afford that anymore. And so they filed a lawsuit against the state. As a result of that, I participated pretty integrally in a process with the Department of Public Welfare, Pennsylvania's Department of Public Welfare, both the Office of Children and Youth and the Office of Medicaid, to create a system that paid for medical foster care as a part of Medicaid with Medicaid dollars. And so we created a tiered system depending on the medical needs of a child. And that's how the medical piece of foster care in Pennsylvania is still paid for today. So that was probably in the early 90s. But it was pretty cutting edge and not anything that was happening anywhere else. And so, yeah, that system still exists. It's still how children with medical needs are paid for, or they're with Department of Public Welfare still pays a portion, but the majority of the monies come from Medicaid. And you asked me, yeah, so as a result of that experience in child welfare, I ended up adopting 2 children, and now have grandchildren as a result. And both of my kids had special healthcare needs as babies. And so, yeah, I mean, for me, it's always been, it's not enough to just talk the talk. You have to really walk the walk. And that was how I chose to do it. And yeah, I have it's the best thing I've ever done in my life. So.
It's incredible. I mean, it's truly walking the walk to what you said. And I through those experiences, I know that you've had really a shrinking pie of resources. And I think when Mike and I think about, the greater Philadelphia region and a lot of entrepreneurial type people and what they deal with, I mean, of course, you're dealing with a lot of emotional, medical, and the factors are a little bit different. But when thinking about the resourcing and how to get really creative in trying to achieve your goal, I think you've had so much success in doing so. And, I think determining where to invest your time and how to invest those resources is a key component. And would love to hear your thoughts on how you kind of evolved over the years in being able to delegate those resources and some of those experiences you've had.
Sure. And you're right. I mean, the resources change every time an administration changes, and so we are always facing reduction in revenue. But unfortunately, the need for services does not diminish. And in fact, over the past few years, that need has gone up. And so there's a few things that I've learned through my career. One is that you really need to assess how to invest your resources. And I don't mean for this to sound crass, but some of the people that we work with or serve really have experienced so much trauma that they no longer have the capacity for changing, or for changing in significant ways, or changing in ways that with all of the resources in the world could change the trajectory of their life. They just don't have the capacity anymore. And so for those folks, I think it's called the principle of thirds. So that's one bucket of people, is people that really do have limited capacity. Then there's another bucket of people that have the motivation and just really need some deep investment in them to help them know the right way to go, and to really motivate them and cheer them on as they make those changes in their life. And then there's the other bucket of folks who really know exactly what they want and just need, whether it's financial resources or a cheerleader to help them on their way. And so depending on what, after an assessment, what bucket individuals or families fall in, it kind of helps us know how to invest our time and resources and who we think will be most successful in changing that trajectory and leading, or finding a way out of the circumstances they may be currently living in. So that's one thing, and that's one way that we kind of decide how to invest our resources. The other thing that we often look at is this a service that we need to be providing ourselves, or is this something that exists somewhere else in the community that through a partnership or a simple referral, that service can be provided by someone else? Maybe someone else with more expertise, or can it be a shared expense between us and a partner so that we're not utilizing all of our resources, but utilizing someone else's money? And in nonprofits, you really learn to utilize someone else's money as often as you can to meet your own, to have the desired impact.
Yeah, that's those are tough decisions to make, but unfortunately necessary, right? To continue to do the good work that you do, you can only do so much for so many.
Right.
The part of the getting here today to Hopeful was coming to PEC, right? You came to PEC prior to the merger with YSI. Talk about that choice, kind of how you got there. I think, we look back, came to PEC, maybe what we didn't realize was a bit of a challenging time for the organization, but you really helped kind of be a key person to navigate through some of those challenges. Maybe talk about that, and then kind of how that led to identifying YSI as a good partner.
Sure. I actually started at PEC as a consultant. Was asked to write a grant due to pretty significant systems change in the child welfare system. PEC was interested in applying for this grant. And so when I came as a consultant, part of my advice to PEC was that they really weren't an ideal candidate for this grant, but that if they partnered with another organization together, that partnership would be very compelling. And so knowing that YSI was just down the street, I recommended that they have a meeting with YSI and begin to talk about ways that they could partner on this particular proposal. And so while we submitted a joint proposal and were invited to present on it, we weren't awarded the contract. But it did lead to further conversations about what was happening in child welfare at the time, how it was impacting YSI in particular, and that they were losing some key contracts, and how, as a result of that, their size they were shrinking, and had some concerns about how they would continue as an organization. PEC was also going through a really difficult time. I think it was mostly due to growing pains, some lack of the right competencies on staff, but we're really facing a fiscal crisis. And so the time was really ripe for both of us to look at how to be sustainable going forward. There are a lot of nonprofits in the city. There's a limited amount of money to fund those nonprofits, and that pie is always shrinking. And so how can we together make better use of resources that were out there? One of the things that made merging appealing was the fact that we had together a very broad continuum of services and complementary services. We weren't duplicating any services at the time. And a lot of the families that we work with at PEC was making use of YSI services and vice versa. And so we were already engaged in this relationship where we were sharing these services for families. And so we wanted to look more deliberately at whether or not it made sense for us to look at a formal way of integrating or aligning or merging. And that's what we began to do.
It's incredible. And I think some of the common themes when hearing your situation when you grew up, and then now kind of as a leader, and hearing the ways in which you collaborate, and especially in your line of services, is really that collaboration and transparency of other leaders, and in kind of not your industry but your service line. It really is only helping the greater good when you are transparent and open, and open to collaborating and leading in that type of nature. And I think as Hopeful continues to evolve, you'll, I'm sure, be able to continue to see the value of that play out. So I think that kind of common theme is really important when thinking about how to grow with limited resources, as we talked about.
Yeah, it's good to know your own strengths and where maybe you can find others. And, the other key player in all of this for me has been my board, and really relying on the expertise that the board brings to the table. Again, so using those resources so I don't have to purchase them somewhere.
What other challenges did you experience or try to overcome in bringing the two organizations together?
I think probably the most challenging, and I don't know if this is talked about enough, is really combining two very different cultures. And how do you do that, and what does that look like? And because it's a lot of personality, and it's a lot of folks wanting to hold on to what they're familiar with. And so we've really tried to bring teams from both organizations, including board members, to the table to help decide what the process looks like, and what will we keep and what will we let go of. It also was really important to us to recognize that at the end of the process, it wasn't PEC standing or YSI standing, that it was a brand new organization called Hopeful that we're both equally a part of and responsible for the success of.
What do you see next for Hopeful? Like, now that the two organizations are combined, obviously you got to work through and kind of build that new identity for Hopeful. Part of that will be the culture. But what's next? What are some of the big near-term things, and then some longer-term things that you'd like to achieve?
Yeah, so one of the very near-term things is we just collaboratively together wrote a grant for the School District of Philadelphia that we succeeded in getting because of the synergies between us. And so that kicked off in January, and really looking to see where else can we find those synergies and expand services or deepen services to have a greater impact across the city.
That's tremendous. Kathy, thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure there's, this is just the tip of the iceberg, as they say, and so many more things. We'll look forward to hearing more about Hopeful and the progress you make in solving big issues in the city of Philadelphia. Really appreciate you spending time with us today. Katie, thank you for joining me. Our next guest on Money Matters TV is Janet Ruoff, a travel planner. As a reminder, you can download the podcast from iTunes and Stitcher, as well as see programs on your YouTube channel, money-matterstv.com. Thank you for joining us for Grow Stories.